Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Can you state your name for the record, sir?
Allan Haymes.
Mr. Haymes, again, I'm Ted Smith. I introduced myself to you before we began. I'm the attorney who represents Xyla Marshall and the current trustee, Sharon Johnson, for the Xyla Marshall Special Needs Trust. I would like you to describe what you're retired currently, sir?
My what?
Are you retired currently?
Yes.
What did you do before you retired?
Real estate.
And I also understand that at some point you became the trustee for Xyla's trust.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Objection calls for to speculate. Tax foundation. Vague and ambiguous.
Sir, occasionally an attorney might state an objection. Once the objection is completed, you can go ahead and answer the question if you're able. How did it come about that you became trustee?
The trustee before me, if I recall correctly, were two lawyers. I don't know why. I don't remember why there was a change to me, but I can't explain it. I don't know. But there was a reason why there was a change, and I'm not sure, but I would think it's the lawyers that were handling it for Brian were not in sync with Brian. Brian wanted a change, and he came to me and asked me, and I agreed for a short time, and then I gave it up.
Did you work with an attorney to have the trustee shifted to you?
I think I did. That attorney.
What attorney, sir?
The one that was his, what do you call it, trustee, before me.
Do you remember that attorney's name?
No, I don't. Sorry. Let me just say this. I have a very poor memory. I have Parkinson's disease, and it's affected my memory. So I'll do the best I can.
That's all we ask, sir. How are you? Does your health, would that affect your ability to fly out here to California to testify at trial?
Absolutely, but I couldn't go. I don't have. I can barely.
I'm sorry. I'm having trouble standing.
What happened?
It appears to me that getting feedback because the microphone is in front of the speaker usually causes feedback. The speaker is now behind him on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Appears to be causing the feedback as will be transferred again.
Is there something that can be done about that on their end?
We're getting feedback from your end. Can you adjust the speaker behind you?
You talking?
Apparently, either moving the speaker behind you or turning it down might affect our ability to hear. So we're having trouble hearing it, and so if the videographer could either move the speaker down.
Is that any better?
Let's hear the witness.
Any better?
I think that's.
That sounds better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good. Yeah, so you're unable to fly?
No, I wouldn't fly. I'm troubled to have to fly to go to doctors, but I haven't been in New York in almost 2 years.
Does the name Jeff Mendy ring any bells for you?
It doesn't ring a bell, but it sounds that I've heard it before.
Would that have been the attorney who acted as trustee just before you?
Objection calls for to speculate.
Can I answer now?
Yes.
The only thing I remember about there were two lawyers. One lawyer was lame. He had something, either his legs or something, he couldn't walk well. And he was not an old man, he was a younger man. But that's the only lawyer I remember. The other one, I don't remember the name. I know there was another lawyer.
Before you became trustee, did you have any understanding as to whether Allan Marshall wanted or did not want access to Brian Marshall's assets?
Objection calls for him to guess, speculate, lacks foundation, vague, ambiguous.
You can go ahead and answer, sir.
Tell me again.
Sure. Did Allan Marshall want to get his hands on Zylo's or on Brian's trust assets?
Objection, argumentative, vague, ambiguous, lacks foundation. Calls for him to speculate.
I had very little to do with that financial stuff until almost to the day of the last time I spoke with Brian.
Do you recall being involved in communications regarding Allan Marshall wanting to get his hands on the assets of Brian Marshall's trust?
Argumentative, leading the witness, lacks foundation, vague, ambiguous.
I can only tell you that sometime in the past 10 years, I think he went to jail. I don't know how long he went to jail. But my remembrance is that he was into drugs or something like that. As far as the monies are concerned, he was a very heavy money grubber guy. He wanted it all. But unfortunately, I don't have an opinion of him as of the last few years when he was in jail. I don't know what he did. I just heard he was in jail.
When you received the trust assets, did you understand that assets to include any property?
Objection calls for him to guess and speculate, calls for a legal conclusion.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Did your daughter own part of a house in Guerneville?
Objection, vague, ambiguous, calls for a legal conclusion, lacks foundation.
I know she bought a house in Kearneyville. I was there once. Zyla was about 6 years old.
Where did she get the money to buy the house?
Objection, lacks foundation, vague, ambiguous, calls for him to guess and speculate, and hearsay.
My daughter got money when she was a young lady. She was run over by a car. And after some time, she was able to get I'm not sure if it was $10,000 or $15,000. And that was in her name, and it was from the accident.
Your daughter received money as a settlement or judgment resulting from an accident?
Yes,
Objection. Calls for guess and speculate. Facts foundation.
You understood there was about between $10,000 and $15,000?
yes, at that time,
Did you have anything to do with that money?
nothing. When you say it had to do with that money, if you're talking about when she asked me to hold it and put it in some investment, I did that, but it didn't last more than 2 months. She wanted it back to buy a house again. So I wasn't sure whether she was buying a second house or whether she was buying the first house. And the Gurneyville house is the only thing that I remember of.
The strike portion is not responsive.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Denise Haymes had you hold that money for her, yes?
Yes,
Objection. Leaving. Ms. Haynes' testimony.
And-
Calls for to speculate. Hearsay.
And then she asked you to give it back?
Objection. Leading. Hearsay.
yes, she asked me to give it back.
Did she tell you why she wanted it back?
Yes, she told me she was going to buy a house.
When was this?
I don't remember. That's the part. I have no idea when it was. But it had to be, God, I'm guessing 25 years ago. 20
Did she tell you what the house was that she wanted to buy?
How what?
Did she tell you where the house was that she intended to buy with the money she was getting back from you?
She said Santa something.
I'm sorry?
Sa- Gurneyville was Santa. I forget. I don't remember that one.
And where did she, to your knowledge, did she buy a house?
The only house I understand she bought when I came into the picture was Gurneyville.
And do you remember how long after she asked you for her money back that she bought that house in Gurneyville?
Within 6 months. I'm guessing 6 months. Sounds familiar to me.
You visited her at that house?
Once.
Calls for guess and speculate. Facts foundation.
Is there an answer?
She said once.
I don't know about that. Ask him again.
What was the question?
Sir, did you answer the question? You visited her at that house?
I visited her at that house once.
Thank you.
I want to take you to that period of time when there were lawsuits involving your daughter's estate and Xylo's guardianship and conservatorship. This was back in 1992 and 1993. Do you recall at some point in time, Xylo or Brian intended to offer Allan Marshall the entire house in Gurneyville?
Objection. Calls for guess and speculate. Facts foundation.
I don't remember that at all. Don't forget I wasn't part of the family group. My daughter had gone off against my wishes, so we didn't have a close relationship. But she did come to me with questions about real estate.
Back in that period of time in the early 1990s, did you have any opinion about whether Brian Marshall was susceptible to others' influence regarding finances?
Objection. Calls for expert opinion. Calls for guess and speculate. Lacks foundation.
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Back in the early 90s, did you have any opinion about whether Xylo Marshall or Brian Marshall was susceptible to others' influence regarding money?
Same objections.
Yes. No question.
What was your opinion?
Same
My-
objections. Lacks foundation. Hang on just a minute. Lacks foundation. Calls for to guess and speculate.
There was no question about that fact. He was young, uneducated, absolutely not.
No question about what, sir?
Objection. Vague and ambiguous.
Did I answer that properly, or did I back it right?
Yes. No question about what, sir?
Objection.
No question that he needed help and sought it from various family parties. That's.
Various,
I'm sorry I made that back in. No, he definitely did have opinions. In fact, he even has a friend of mine who befriended him and has until this day in Florida. When he lived in Florida, he met him, and he somehow got friendly with my friend and called him when I didn't give him answers that he wanted.
Called him about what?
Called him about whether he should do this or that with money, buying stocks, that kind of thing.
Do you recall when you were trustee of the trust that there was any concern about a possible default in loan payments on the property in Guerneville?
I had some vague information, but at that point in time, my daughter was gone, and I really didn't pay too much attention to some of the things because Brian was loosely involved with things that he didn't understand. And when he didn't get information from me that I didn't think he needed, he went to my friend. My friend recommended certain things, and that was the relationship that had to do with whether Brian looked for help or not.
When you were trustee, did you understand that the trust included half of that property in Guerneville?
Objection. Leading assumes facts, not evidence. Calls for a legal conclusion. Calls for hearsay testimony.
I was under the impression that my daughter owned the house, not the two of them. That was my understanding when she borrowed money and when she asked questions. That was my understanding. And it was her.
Did you have an understanding? Did you have an understanding when, after your daughter passed away, of what portion of that house went into her estate?
Same objections.
I didn't, or I should say, I didn't have enough information to know whether or not that occurred.
Do you remember when you were trustee that the trust included 1/2 of that house in Guerneville?
Objection, calls for legal conclusion, lacks foundation, calls for to guess and speculate, calls for hearsay testimony.
As I said, I was under the impression that my daughter owned the house, not both of them. That was what my understanding when my daughter spoke to me about real estate in that house. I said, "Are you putting up all the money?" She said, "Yes."
Okay.
Matter of fact,
Were you aware of that? Well, let me back up. Did your daughter ever purchase a second house?
Objection, calls for to guess and speculate, lacks foundation.
I know she was trying to buy land that was adjoining her property. I don't know if she bought it or not. I don't remember a second house.
Did you talk to your daughter about real estate pretty frequently?
Not frequently, no. Only when there was something pending or something that she is looking at, which was not frequently.
Well, for the record, we've either lost or having difficulty with the connection.
I didn't hear that.
All right, I think you're back. We had a little glitch in the connection there.
Where are we?
Did your daughter, was your daughter trained as a real estate agent?
No.
Objection, calls for to guess and speculate, lacks foundation.
To your knowledge, did she take any real estate courses?
She said she was going to, or she did. I didn't get a follow-up on that. She wasn't in communication with me as often as I would have liked.
For the record, it looks like we've got a sporadic connection that's breaking in and out on occasions.
Did you have an understanding that the trust owned the entire house in Guerneville?
Yes, that's what I said. I was under the impression she owned the house.
And that house subsequently went into the trust for Brian's benefit?
Objection, calls for to guess and speculate, lacks foundation, calls for to testify on hearsay, calls for legal conclusion.
Sir, did you understand that that house then went into the trust for Brian's benefit?
Same objections.
I don't, because I wasn't the trustee in 1992. I think I lost the trusteeship or gave it up sometime immediately after my daughter died.
So during the time that you were trustee, there was no, to your knowledge, there was no property held in your name for the trust?
Yeah, right.
Do you recall Allan Marshall doing or saying anything? Well, let me back up. Since your daughter's death, have you spoken to Allan Marshall?
No. I don't know.
I understand that you have written him a letter. Have you received any letters from Allan Marshall since your daughter's death?
I think I remember a letter, but I don't have it. When I moved, I threw out a lot of papers that I thought were unnecessary to keep, but I don't remember anything like that.
Do you know a woman named Melanie Cook?
I don't know the person. The Melanie name sounds familiar. It might be the woman that Allan was working with or living with or sleeping with. It's something like that. I don't remember the rest.
Do you remember ever communicating with someone named Melanie who was associated with Allan?
I don't remember. I think it was, if I did, it was one time.
Do you remember talking to her or having correspondence with her?
No, there was no correspondence. It was purely a question maybe that I needed to have an answer for that she did give me anyway. So I dropped it.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So I
understand.
dropped it.
Yeah, what did you say just before that, sir?
Excuse me? What?
Did you get it?
No, it's just very
Yeah.
soft-spoken.
If you can, keep your voice level up and
Okay.
describe
okay.
for me as best you can what the conversation was that you somewhat recall with Melanie.
I don't really remember what it was about. The only thing I can think of that it may have been involved with Brian. I'm wasting my breath. I don't remember.
Did you ever hear anything from anyone to suggest that Allan Marshall intended to hold and own that house in Guerneville as his alone?
I don't remember if there was such a thing, but there always was conversation about house and money whenever the few times I spoke with them. Bear in mind that I have not had a close relationship because of my daughter's interest in the wrong kind of people.
I can fix his email and he hangs up.
Did somebody say something?
No, I think that was something unrelated from another room, perhaps.
Oh,
Sir, you have some documents there in front of you. And I wonder if you would, there's a stack of documents marked beginning Exhibit A, and a stack of documents marked beginning Exhibit 1. And if you look at the ones marked Exhibit A, maybe on your right there, I'd like you to go down to the one that's marked Exhibit S. It's near the very end.
near the end?
Yes, it's near the end, and it's marked Exhibit S, as in Sam.
Some are upside down and some are straight. I can't. This is so fucked up.
Yes, I think you'll want to keep going past those dark pages, sir.
I hope so.
I'm going for S.
Half are up.
Yeah, they're all stuff. These are all numbered. There's P. Q. There you go.
Right.
Did he say S or F?
S. You said S, right?
Yes.
All right, he's got it.
Okay.
It's a March 2nd, 1993 letter from Louise Bale Spymaster.
Yes.
Have you seen this letter before? Do you recall seeing it?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I know she wanted to give it up. There's a familiar name, Earl Phoenix.
Sir, can you repeat the name?
I just said the name Earl Felix.
Oh, thank you.
Phoenix.
I forget what but he was a nice man. On the phone.
Yeah, I think we've lost connections in there. It's sporadic.
What's that?
Sir, does reading this help refresh your recollection that at one point Brian intended to give the house to his father?
I understand that that's what he said, but I don't know if he did or not.
Okay. I'd like you to look at a document marked Exhibit 2.
In this package?
Probably the other package. But it looks like things might be a little mixed up.
These are all mixed up.
It'll say in the lower right-hand corner, Exhibit 2.
I think you need to go to the other package, just from what I'm seeing you're looking at.
These are.
To the text that's going through the records, look at the bottom right-hand corner and see if you're seeing Exhibit 2s or Exhibit alphabetical in the middle of the exhibit.
Yeah, this is A, Exhibit A, and this is S, so
You
alphabetical.
need to be in the other.
Do you have any exhibits there with numbers?
No, I mean there's bait stamps on them.
But none marked exhibit and then with a number?
No, just with letters.
Okay.
I'm assuming this is Tom speaking.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, here's exhibit. That's exhibit N.
If they were in
These are
alphabetical.
all alphabetized.
Are they?
These are all alphabetized too. Is there a bait stamp on it?
That's all right. I'll work with the merit exhibits.
What are we up to?
March 7th, 1923.
It is crazy. It should have been done properly.
Mr. Haymes, how would you characterize your understanding of Brian Marshall's relationship with his father?
Objection lacks foundation.
Brian did not have a relationship with his father. He had a beautiful relationship with his mother. And when she died, he needed people to help him. And there were people around that helped.
Was his father one of those people around to help him?
Oh, no.
Objection calls for him to, hang on just a minute. Calls for him to guess and speculate, lacks foundation, incomplete, hypothetical, vague, and ambiguous.
No way. In the little bit of relationship that I had, he was a bum.
That's all the questions I have for you right now, sir.
Okay.
But I think Mr. Young likely has some.
What's that?
I think Mr. Young is likely to have some questions for you.
Oh, okay.
So you're not done yet.
Okay.
Mr. Haymes, have you ever met Allan Marshall?
Yes.
In the last 20 years?
20 years? No.
Do you dislike Allan Marshall?
I didn't dislike him or liked him. I never saw enough of him.
Did you ever talk with him about property at 15503 Old Casanero Highway in Guerneville?
Well, what is that? What are those numbers?
Do you know the address for any of the properties owned either by Allan Marshall or by Denise Haymes in Guerneville?
No. I'm not familiar with any.
For what time period were you trustee?
I would have to guess because, as I said, I got rid of most of my papers, if not all of them.
Well, we're entitled to your best recollection, but we don't want you to be just guessing. That's all it is.
If you're talking about time spent with anybody, I'd have to know more about it. Say that question again?
How many years were you trustee?
Again, I'm going to have to guess because I don't remember. But I would say probably a year, maybe a year and a half. And that had to be after my daughter died.
Do you recall when your daughter passed away?
I think it was the 15th of September. I think it was 89. I'm not sure.
And do you have a recollection of how long after that you became trustee?
I would say within 6 months or 8 months, something like that.
Now, your prior spouse, Rita Haymes, was trustee for a while. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding.
And were you trustee before or after she?
After?
And do you know how long Rita Haymes was trustee?
No.
And do you know who was trustee, if anyone, after Rita Haymes, and then you became trustee?
There was these 2 lawyers that I told you about earlier.
Do you know how long they were trustee?
Guessing again, maybe a year and a half.
Did Rita Haymes ever tell you why she resigned as trustee?
Up until a couple of years ago, I never spoke to her at all.
Did you ever speak to her while she was trustee of Brian Haymes?
No.
And any time has she ever told you why she resigned as trustee?
She didn't speak to me until 2 years ago. I don't think so.
Why did you resign as trustee?
I was having difficulty satisfying Brian's needs.
How are you having difficulty satisfying his needs?
He needed more attention as a parent. I was living in New York. He lived in Florida, and then he moved to California.
See if in that stack of documents, probably about 30 pages down, you can find an Exhibit J.
You say J?
Yes. What you may want to look for is in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a square stamped in the upper right-hand corner that says August 31, 1993.
'93?
Yes.
March 2nd, '93?
August 31, 1993.
August?
May very well be in your other stack of documents, sir.
Was it J? There you go.
Have you found Exhibit J?
Yeah.
And down at the bottom, it also has a number 100237 on it.
237?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and mark that here too and attach it as Exhibit J. Do you recognize that letter?
No, I don't.
Do you recognize your signature on the
Oh,
letter?
oh yeah, the signature is mine. So I must have gotten it from Fight Master.
And in August of 1993, did you have an address at 210 Central Park South in New York?
Yes,
And do you recall having a phone number of 212-765-0960?
right.
Any question at all that this is a letter authored by you?
Is this what? What?
You agree this is a letter that you wrote, you signed?
Interesting. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it looks familiar to me now.
And you would acknowledge that's your signature on it?
That's my signature.
After having read the letter, do you have any recollection of why you were writing this letter to the court?
I think
First of all, I guess the question would be to set a foundation. Do you have a recollection of writing that letter?
it looks like my stuff. But if that's, if it's mine, it's mine.
Do you have a recollection of writing that letter?
Yes,
Do you have a recollection of why you were drafting this letter?
I was. This was mailed to the Superior Court. I must have wrote it. It's my signature and it looks familiar.
But as you sit here today, do you have a recollection of writing that letter and mailing it to the court?
I don't know if I mailed it. How did it says received? Yeah, okay. Looks like stuff I would do.
If you'll look at the bottom stack of the exhibits to your right, maybe have the technician help you. If you go to the very end, you'll see that there, on the right-hand corner, there's EP numbers that end at 40. If you go backwards, you'll find one that's EP 600,005.
$6,005.
Yes. Okay, and is that an August 17, 1992 letter?
Yes.
Signature on the bottom?
Yes.
I'll mark that as Exhibit W.
Did you ask the question?
Do you recognize the signature at the bottom?
Sure, that's me.
In this letter, it appears to recount a conversation you had had with Brian. In the fourth paragraph, it says, I reviewed the court papers and am not quite clear as to Brian's position in the property. His father went to court and told Brian he won. Do you see those two sentences?
Who won?
Do you see those two sentences?
Say that again?
You see the two sentences I just read to you, correct?
I don't know how to. I can't follow you.
Okay. Do you see in the fourth paragraph the sentence that says, his father went to court and told Brian he won?
His father went to court and told Brian he won. Brian won or he won? His father.
That's my question to you. Do you recall a conversation with Brian back in August of 1992 that you're recounting in this letter?
I think he's talking about Brian winning.
Okay. My question to you is this letter recounting a conversation you had with Brian, or do you have any recollection at all about what you're recounting in this letter?
Earl Phoenix. So what?
Does that paragraph appear to relate to a conversation you had with Brian Marshall?
Oh, I think it has to do with Earl Phoenix.
You think that paragraph deals with a conversation you had with Earl Phoenix?
He's the one who's telling me that he had a good news letter. I sent him a good news letter. Court was generous paying a legal fee. I have trouble trying to clear it, to remember what the hell this was about.
Do you have a recollection of what it's about?
I know it's my letter, but I don't remember why.
Do you have a recollection of ever talking with Brian Marshall about the house in Guerneville?
No, not really. I didn't think he was able to understand what was going on.
I believe at one point you testified you believe the trust gave up the interest in the property. When do you believe that happened?
I'm going to object that Ms. Case's testimony that in the Lax Foundation, it's also misleading.
You can go ahead and answer.
And then it refers to Fight Master. Maybe that letter put some light on the subject.
Did you testify earlier today that you believed that the trust gave up an interest in the property?
That the what?
That the trust gave up an interest in property in Guerneville?
I'm going to object to the question because the record's going to speak for itself regarding this testimony. And the question is misleading and Lax Foundation.
Okay, we'll go back to the first of the record. We'll go back to first. It was published in the first 10 minutes. Probably be just a break here for a minute.
Are you taking a break now?
Not a formal break off the record, but it'll be just a minute, so you can relax for a minute.
No. What was it again?
I believe the trust gave up the interest in the property.
You have somebody's phone number?
Do you have a recollection earlier in your testimony of saying that you believe the trust gave up interest in the property? Do you recall that?
I'm going to object. The record speaks for itself. The question is misleading and mischaracterizes the testimony in Lax Foundation.
You can go ahead and answer.
Oh, what was the question?
And I'll stipulate the objection stands. Do you have a recollection of earlier in the deposition, at the start of the deposition, testifying to the effect that you believe the trust gave up an interest in the property?
I'm going to object again. The Lax Foundation misstates the prior testimony. The record speaks for itself, and it's misleading.
Please answer.
I'm not following it.
I'll have the court reporter read the question back.
We don't know. And we can't talk about it. I just spoke to Nancy. Nancy said,
Do you have a recollection earlier in your testimony of saying that you believe? Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Okay. Do you have a recollection of earlier in your deposition, at the start of the deposition, testifying to the effect that you believed the trust gave up an interest in the property?
Again, I object that the record speaks for itself. The question is misleading, mischaracterizes the evidence. Lax Foundation.
Please answer.
when you say earlier testifying today or some other time?
Today.
I don't recall it.
Do you have any information as to the location of the property in Guerneville that your daughter reported to you she bought?
She told me about a house with a running brook behind the back. And I did see it when I went out to visit her once.
And that was the house that she told you she owned herself? It was her own house?
Yes,
And that's the only piece of property that you were aware of that she ever told you she had purchased?
that she told me, yeah, right. She did not tell me she owned any other property except that she was looking to buy the land next door to the property, Gurneyville.
Did she ever report back to you of whether or not she purchased that bare land?
There was some conversation about it with her and Allan Marshall. And I know there was negotiations, and then it ended. They didn't tell me anything.
Were those conversations you were a party to, or conversations that someone told you about?
I wasn't a party to it. No, I had nothing to do with. The only thing we had to do with the land. She wanted to know what value I placed on it. And in those days, as you can see, the prices were very low. But as far as I know, I don't think she bought it. But maybe she did.
If you will find in the documents there Exhibit 4,
He doesn't have those.
4?
He doesn't have it.
could we check with the technician to see if they've got any exhibits with numbers on the lower right-hand corner?
Look for 4.
Or without success.
Letters. I don't see any ones with numbers.
Okay. When you mentioned you suffer from Parkinson's, is that a recent diagnosis, something that you've been dealing with for quite some time? How would you find that?
About 2 years.
And when you say you have a poor memory, is it that you have, in your opinion, a memory that fails you, meaning you can't recall things, or a memory that fools you, meaning you recall things inaccurately?
I think the first part is probably more probable.
Sometimes do you believe you misrecall things?
I have trouble recalling a lot of things. I could be in the den in my house and want to go to the kitchen and get something, and I forget. when I went there to get. But I'm not talking about once in a blue moon. This happens to me frequently. It's very difficult for me to retain what I have to do without screwing it up, not knowing whether I did it, didn't do it. It ain't nice. It's a difficult
Does
thing.
it also
Yeah.
affect your ability to remember things in the past?
Ironically enough, that's the difference. The very past I seem to be able to pick up on, but closer things I have a lot of difficulty. Anything that's been happening within, could be minutes, hours.
So your feeling is it affects more your short-term memory versus your long-term memory?
I would say probably.
I have no further questions right now.
Questions right now?
He's pondering.
What?
Wait, let you know.
Here.
Mr. Smith is...
Mr. Haymes, this is Ted Smith again. What's your understanding of Brian Marshall's disability?
Objection lacks foundation, calls for a medical opinion, an expert opinion.
Mr. Haymes, what's your understanding of Brian Marshall's disability?
Objection vague and ambiguous, lacks foundation, calls for an expert and or medical opinion.
You want me to answer it?
Yes.
Brian's come a long way. He had a lot of difficulty up until the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, he's seemed to have been doing very well for the problem he has. And he needs a lot of help with knowing that he's a man instead of injured. And I try to give him, especially the last 5 years, I give him a lot of credit for what he's been able to accomplish.
Thank you, Mr. Haymes. Nothing further. We're done.
All done?
Hold on, unless the reporter needs something further.
No, I just would like to know, Tom,
Yes.
is it possible for you to send me an audio cassette of this?
Yeah, I got it right here. Where you want me to send
To
it?
my office. To my office would be fine. Just put attention, Emily.
And who wants copies of the video?
I do. Ted Smith.
Ted Smith?
Yes, I think it was all arranged through Cal North.
All
I'll
right,
contact Cal North and let them know.
no problem.
You can send the video to Cal North as well, and we'll give it to the attorney.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
What are we doing with the papers that were sent to me?
What do you want them to do with the papers?
You don't have to keep them. It's your choice. Do with them whatever you like.
The ones that you sent me, right?
You want them?
Those ones that are sitting in front of you, you can do whatever you want with them.
No, those were here.
Yeah, you can keep them if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
I know.